Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NBA Front Office Show. I'm Trevor Lane. You can find me on Twitter at Trevor_Lane, joined by Keith Smith at Keith Smith NBA. Keith, neither one of us are quite at 100% right now. We're just barely hanging in there. This is my first show back since losing my voice Friday night, so you guys can probably hear it. But you know what? We're hanging in there. We're gonna find a way to power through.
Yeah, mine is rapidly cutting in and out. It's the nature of this time of year. We've got a lot of playoff games, and both of us have been making the rounds. Such is life when your team is still playing. So that's part of it. Everybody wants someone to come on and talk about
Mm-hmm.
the teams you cover and all that stuff. But we're gonna stay probably largely away from those two teams and get into some other news and notes around the NBA and bring it to you guys. Probably a little bit of a shorter show today, just trying to cover. Thankfully, I love the sound of my own voice, so you can let me do most of the talking.
Well, I certainly do appreciate that. So let's start here. Dillon Brooks out in Memphis, according to Shams Charania. He's been told by the Grizzlies they will not bring him back under any circumstances. That's the kind of like strong statement that we rarely hear. Usually it's, we're going to evaluate and figure out what's best for both sides. That it's not that kind of like hard line, nope, no question, we're done. How did we get to this point? Is this just the accumulation of all the stuff that's happened with Dillon Brooks? Is it his basketball fit? What are you thinking here, Keith?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's the accumulation part of it. I think the Grizzlies, we know they were looking for an upgrade on the wing at the trade deadline.
Mm-hmm.
They were mentioned to have made major offers for both OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges and were turned down by the Raptors and the Nets, respectively. So I think that is a indicator that they were willing to upgrade to that spot. And likely Dillon Brooks would have been a part of those trade packages just for the salary matching component, if for no other reason. But then all of his nonsense throughout these playoffs over the course of the years. It's one thing I don't mind at all when players yap and talk trash, but then you either back it up with your play on the court or you own it afterwards if you don't back it up on the court. And Dillon Brooks did neither. Right, didn't back it up, and then didn't own it. Ran from his media obligations. Those are ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
I mean, left the locker room before the media could even get in. Like
Yeah,
literally ran away from those, and then got
yeah,
fined for it,
yep,
$25,000.
yeah. And for all those people saying you shouldn't have to talk to the media, that's part of the
Part of the
CBA.
job.
It's part of the job, but it's also part of the NBA CBA is that players will do media obligations, especially post game and in the postseason, and he just didn't. So so I have no problem with the fine, and I have no problem with the people who are trashing him today because this is very much the bully on the playground gets punched in the nose and runs away crying, right? Like he tried to be the bully, he got punched in the nose, and then he ran away crying. So now flipping it back to the Grizzlies and to basketball, very obvious they are content to make him the scapegoat.
Mm-hmm.
Why would they want to do that? Well, it takes pressure off everybody else
Yeah.
who's still on the roster. It takes pressure off John Morant, who is the team's franchise player, who also did not have a great playoffs and didn't have a very good end to his regular season either, with his own off the court issues. Now, John Morant stood up there and said, like, I need to be better. Like, and I caused some of these off court issues, and we need to be better about this. And it all starts with me. So credit to him. We'll see if he is better going forward. We all hope he will be, and at least he recognizes it. It
Yep.
is extremely strongly stated here, though, with the idea of like, we're done under no circumstances. My guess is just the way this statement is phrased, this came through Dillon Brooks's side of things, whether it's his agent or a manager or just someone close to him, because I don't think the team is putting it out quite like this. I think the team would rather do what you said is, we're going to evaluate all options. And Zach Kleiman, who basically runs basketball operations for the Grizzlies, even said himself when asked at exit interviews, like, I'll talk about Dillon Brooks another day, which that was the point where I was like, well, Dillon Brooks is done in Memphis.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way that happens. Moving forward, I still think the best plan of action here is try to do a sign and trade, because otherwise you just lose the salary slot completely. So, if you can do a sign and trade where you can move him, no, Dillon Brooks does not have all that much value on his own. So the real get would be Brooks gets let's just say 15 million in salary, plus some other players, plus some draft picks. And now all of a sudden you've got yourself a $20 million player coming in, and that puts you in range for some of the guys we talked about, if you offered enough for all those guys. Then the other team would be acquiring Brooks as the salary match, but really it'd be about the draft picks and maybe, other young players if they're interested. Why would Brooks do it? Because the people have, I said this on Twitter, and people are like, why would he ever help the Grizzlies? Because that's the way he can make the most money, because he's looking at probably a chunk of someone's mid-level exception this coming year, and that's it. So it's if he wants to get more money than the MLE, this is the only way it'll happen. And he may be willing to say, hey, I don't really care, because I'm not really going to be with the Grizzlies, so give me more money and I'm off and I'm moving on. We've seen things like that happen with regularity around the league.
I think part of this is a conscious effort on the side of the Grizzlies to rehab their image a little bit, right? I mean, this is the team that was known for grit and grind. This is the team that was known for blue collar, hard work. Just get out there and you're going to get into teams, and they still kind of have that element. But now you've added all of this trash talk, and I don't think that sits well with fans in general. I mean, this was Keith. This surprised me, even knowing that the Grizzlies are a team that likes to talk. Like neutral fans who don't have like a deep rooted hatred for the Lakers, or don't have like a rooting interest really, we're pulling for the Lakers in this series because of the way the perception is around the Grizzlies, because of all their talking that they're doing. Like, you got to be really getting under people's skin and really annoying fans if you're going to get to that point where it's the Lakers and you're not being the team that everybody's rooting for, that's not a Lakers fan, right? Typically it's the Lakers versus about anybody who's a neutral fan is pulling for the other team, because we just naturally we root for the underdog. That was not the case here, and I don't think that sits well with Grizzlies ownership. I'm sure that doesn't sit well with their fans, and so this is going to be a step towards, and John Morant talked about this a little bit, but a step towards getting away from all of the talking and getting that sort of persona exercised from the locker room. And Dillon Brooks is kind of the head of the snake when it comes to all that kind of stuff. So now it's going to be more about letting your play on the court do the talking for you, and not getting so distracted, or not being such a distraction with the stuff that you're saying in the media.
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on with that. I think the other piece to it as we get into this is you kind of do your thing. There's a fine line between respect and being intimidated by, or just, overly respecting an opponent. But just to act the way they acted towards LeBron James, and I'm not saying they need to all come bow down and kiss the ring before the games, go in and like, hey, I feel good about my chances against LeBron. But you don't need to be a jerk about it the way he was before the games. Like, there's no need of that. And that's not even the whole, like I said when that happened, like, man, I don't think you really want to talk that much trash to LeBron. Even taking that part out of it, there's just no reason for it. Like, there's literally nothing to be gained, because there's no way LeBron woke up and was like, damn, man, I guess Dillon Brooks is right. I am old and I'm no good anymore. Like, that was never going to happen. Like, that's not going to happen 10 or 15 years from now. If he talks trash to him like that, he's still going to be like, all right, check ball, let's go, I'll show you. Like, it just is, it was just one of those things where I'm like, man, this is just, I don't know. So I am of the mindset of that was problem number one. And then it just, every single player, I don't care who you are, has a tolerance for nonsense level compared to your role and production on the team, compared to your salary. It's like a tripod. If any one of those three legs gets too far out of balance, the whole thing falls over. So what happens is you really get to a point where, hey, your production on court is not outweighing where this is. You happen to be a free agent and go. I've seen people saying Dillon Brooks is going to be lucky to get the minimum, or he may be playing in China. That's all going way too far. When you can defend the way he can and you can score, even as inefficiently as he does, you're going to have a role on a team in the NBA. Someone is going to get him. And NBA teams, if I've learned nothing else over the years, are supremely egotistical in the mindset of, well, he won't do that here. We'll be the ones to make him see the light and make him go the right direction and all those things. Half the time it doesn't work out. A quarter of the time it doesn't really matter. There's no impact. And probably about a quarter of the time it does work out and it's fine. So I think and someone else gives Dillon Brooks a chance
Mhm.
here, and then we'll see where it goes. But I mean, this is just, this is a mess of his own making. Maybe it's a mess of the Grizzlies' own making for putting up for it for a couple years. The other last thing I'll say too is this sometimes happens with young teams on the way up. There'll be two things: is one, team wide. I've never seen public perception flip on a team quicker
Yeah.
than it did on this team. Right,
Yep.
a year ago, everybody loved these guys. Then they kind of went into that Warriors playoff series and acted like a bunch of jerks, and then cried about all this other stuff. And people were kind of, I'm not so sure. And then this year started, and people were like, all right, I don't know. They're talking a lot. And then by halfway through the season, people were out like on this team. And then everything from there, they did just push people further out. Then the other thing I'll say is with a guy like Dillon Brooks, he stepped up when that team was kind of in a rebuild moment, right? They were kind of building back after Gasol had moved on and Randolph had moved on, and Conley was probably getting close to moving on. Dillon Brooks became, probably a very loud voice in that locker room, and that was part of what helped get that team to where they are. But then the challenge is those guys can't always then step back and take less of the spotlight when it's clear, all right, this team's leaders need to be John Morant, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr. He still wants to be the loud voice in the locker room. And it's like, dude, you score, 12 points per game on crappy shooting efficiency with, decent defense. Like, no one wants to hear it from you. So that's the other problem why you got to move on as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, I said it a bunch of times during the series. The Lakers' best defense was Dillon Brooks' offense. They left him wide open all series and dared him to shoot. And that was, I mean, that was a big part of the reason why the Grizzlies won Game 5 was they pulled Dillon Brooks and they put in Luke Kennard, who can shoot the hell out of the ball. So this is, I think it's a step forward on the basketball court, assuming that you can replace him. Finding a wing is not easy in today's NBA. The Grizzlies will have assets to go do it, though. But finding one isn't necessarily easy. But that said, I think this can be a step forward on the floor and then a step forward in terms of the culture of the team, or a step back into what it should be, really. I mean, it was just over a year ago when I was praising the Grizzlies like crazy because of that promotion they did with John Morant jersey. It was so awesome. They had that.
Yep.
The fan was in the crowd wearing a Steph Curry jersey, and Ja kind of glared at him or whatever, and just said, look, I want to see fans wearing my jersey cheering for me and all that. And the Grizzlies turned it into such amazing marketing opportunities, saying, hey, turn in a jersey of any other team and we'll give you a John Morant jersey for free. They're going to capture fans at a young age and make them Grizzlies fans for life. But you're not going to get fans behind a team that acts like this. And so I think that, just to kind of put a ribbon on this is the right move on and off the court for the Grizzlies. I'm just surprised that it came out so publicly and so definitively.
Yeah, and you almost wondered, did it need to, right?
Yeah.
Like this. That's why I also think this is from the Dillon Brooks camp of, hey, we're going to fire one last shot at the Grizzlies this way. Because it's just the Grizzlies, I think, are like, hey, I think everybody knows we're moving on, so let's just move on. But, they, for whatever reason, wanted it out there, and, there it is. Now it's out there for the world to see.
All right, let's move on to Dallas. The Mavericks are not expected to re-sign Christian Wood. Keith, I've long been a fan of Christian Wood, but I'm starting to wonder, as much as I've talked about, like Lakers fans have been talking about Mo Bamba a ton recently. And we've said, look, the idea of Mo Bamba has always been better than the actuality of Mo Bamba. Are we entering that territory with Christian Wood? Because I see a big man that's so multifaceted on the offensive end of the floor, but if the Mavs are now moving on here, there's obviously some other stuff going on here. So what's happening here? Is this the correct move for Dallas? And then what does this mean for Christian Wood's future?
Yeah, this was in many ways, if we look at Christian Wood's numbers, one of the best seasons he's had since he became a full-time regular player, right? So that's a bit of a oddity, right? This is a guy who he's in his late 20s now. So he'll be, let me make sure I get this right. Yeah, he'll be 28 right before the start of next season.
Mm-hmm.
So not too old, right? To give a 4-year contract to, you'd feel fine with that. It's going to cover him into his early 30s. The problem is his defense isn't very good. He needs to be in definitely in a certain defensive system where he's asked to do very little, and his team can cover for him, in certain ways. And then offensively, he's a guy who needs the ball quite a bit to be effective. I think he's also somebody who, if he's not getting touches, you're not going to get him on the boards. He's not going to give you much on defense. Like, he just needs to be actively engaged. So I'm not surprised Dallas is kind of setting signals of, hey, we're going to move on here, just because I think Dallas is going to do quite a bit to remake the roster around Luka and probably Kyrie as much as they can to try to get the right fitting pieces around those two guys. And that includes you have to have better defenders in the front court to cover for them both. And that is not Christian Wood, but someone else is going to give him a chance. It's probably going to be like an MLE type deal. Probably be shorter is my guess. It'll probably be a 1 or 2 year deal, or one of those ones where it's like a 1 year deal with a team option, or the 2 year deal with non-guaranteed money or something like that. But yeah, it's definitely one of those ones where I don't think the way this season started for Christian Wood, which was excellent, and the Mavs were playing well, certainly didn't finish anywhere where he wanted it to be, because now it's like looking like struggle city to get this guy the giant contract he was hoping for.
Yeah, I mean, almost 17 points per game, 7 boards, 1.1 blocks, 52% from the field if we round up, shoots the three, 38% from deep. Like, those are, if you squint, that's the kind of big you want to have on the floor with Luka, right? A guy who can put the ball in the basket, a guy who can stretch the floor for you, can block a few shots, do a few things on the boards, but it just wasn't really working there. So I do think he's going to get another opportunity in the Western Conference or in the NBA. Like, we're going to see him get picked up somewhere on a solid deal. But like you said, it'll be a short-term deal. But the dude is 6'10" with a 7'3" wingspan, can shoot the three. Like, somebody is, especially at 28. It's just, to me, there's got to be some red flags, some big red flags. If a team like Dallas that needs talent, that needs pieces around Luka so badly, that needs pieces that can just do things at an NBA level, right? Just surround Luka with guys, with legit NBA players, and you're moving on from a guy who can put up these numbers. That tells you a lot about all of the other stuff beyond just what you see on the box score.
Yeah, and a guy you gave up a first round pick to acquire, too. That's not always great. So yeah, I think we're in a position here where, if you're Dallas, I'm not going to suggest there's anything nefarious off the court going on.
No,
I think it's just, this doesn't fit. Maybe it's not a fit in the locker room either. Maybe it's one of those things where it's like, hey, if you were content to be a bench big that plays 25 minutes a game, like, we'd be happy to have you back. But you want to start, you want this, you want that. It's just not a fit with where we're going as a roster. So we're going to move on in a different direction. But yeah, I think it's one of those things where, I'd love to see him land with the right kind of team that's more set up to win right away, that has a bunch of veterans that can kind of say, here's what we need, right? We thought that was Dallas because that was a trade. I remember we both were like, this is a good trade. We like this trade. This is a good get for the Mavs. And it just kind of all went sideways on them from there. So yeah, I am, disappointed that it didn't work out. And, I'm going to remain skeptical, because now this is kind of 3. Well, I'm not going to say 3, because everything was fine in Detroit. He just moved on for more money and a better opportunity. But it didn't really end well in Houston. Didn't end great with the Mavs. So I am a little, all right, we're kind of getting down towards, like, if it doesn't work in the next spot and it looks like a great spot, it's on you. Like, then it's not on anybody else anymore.
Keith, you know what, this is random. This is a blast from the past, but Christian Wood, his best role to me would be that guy who primarily comes off the bench, can do a lot of work there, can space the floor a bit, but in a pinch can be a starter for you if you need to. And I want to go all the way back 23 years.
Oh man.
Yeah. Donyell Marshall.
Oh wow.
Back in his Jazz days. If he had that kind of a role with somebody, and maybe even a little bit lower on the minutes, but for somebody, that was a player that always stood out to me. He was one of the first of the new wave of kind of not necessarily 3 and D, but the fours that could really shoot from outside. if he could fit into that type of a role somewhere where he can kind of be that jack of all trades type of player. And I don't know if he can get there, but look, I mean, Daniel Marshall played until 35. Like, he could have a really good long career if he can just fit into that type of a role somewhere and really buy in.
Yeah, that's not a bad one at all. I think there's also maybe if he can figure it out and get it figured out soon, he could have like what Robert Ory was at the end of his career, right? Where he just kind of, play probably more productive on the offensive end, obviously, but just be a guy who does a lot of good things for a team off the bench. Late career Al Jefferson is a guy too that I thought of, like, who was just kind of you put him on the block and he was just going to get you. He wasn't going to play a lot of defense, wasn't going to do a lot in the opening group, but throw him on the block and he's going to get you 10, 15 points a night, easy enough, get you some rebounds, block a shot or two, and call it a night. But yeah, I'm a little worried this one is going to go the way it's gone for Boogie Cousins over the last few years, where it just kind of never clicks. There's always something, and then next thing you know, it's just kind of over.
I hope not.
Yeah, I hope not too.
That's not the way it goes.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about Miles Bridges, expected to be back with the Hornets. Not a surprise here. He's still restricted. Hasn't signed a new deal yet, right?
Yep, correct.
So still a restricted free agent. So, and I can't see anybody sending out a big offer and really like testing the Hornets to see if they're going to match or anything like that, given all of the other stuff with Miles Bridges. So he'll come back. And then what's his suspension? It's 20 games to start this next season, or is it was 10 and 20 coming this season?
It's 10.
10 and 20
he got 30 with 20 already assumed served, which I don't even know why they I mean, I don't know. It's just weird the way they did it, but yeah. So it's going to be 10 games. So whoever signs him, Hornets or otherwise, you'll see him all the way through the preseason because those don't count. Then he'll go away for 10 games, and then he'll come back into the lineup after that.
I don't know if we ever talked about it. What did you think about the NBA's rationale that they basically told Miles Bridges that, hey, you're not going to be playing this season, so that's why it was counted like as though he was suspended for this year? That was kind of the gist of it. What did you think of that whole rationale for why? Because some people were upset that he only got suspended for like 10 games in the next season.
I don't hate that part of it because he did already miss a year, but why weren't we just told this? Why was this just kind of casually dropped into an interview that was done about, where it seemed like that was like, oh, hey, by the way, what about Miles Bridges? And it was just kind of dropped out there of, hey, this is what it's going to be. And this was our assumption. That part I don't like and don't understand. Like, just tell us, right? Tell us like, hey, this is a, he's already in effect. Like when it came up, last year? It was right before Christmas when it seemed like the Hornets may sign Miles Bridges. Well, if the answer was really like that's not allowed and the NBA wasn't going to allow him to play, I guess they still could have signed him. But why was it not then? The NBA could have just right then said Hornets can sign him, but he will not play this season. Like, then we all would have been like, okay, like I get it, right? And that seems like a fair punishment given everything that went down. But yeah, now it just feels like a little like okay, or which makes me wonder, like, was this not really what happened? And it's like, hey, retroactively, like what, like, I know this sounds awful to think this, but right, I've worked for a giant multi-billion-dollar company before and seen like oh crap, we need to, decision making that goes on. I wonder if somebody was like, oh shoot, we forgot about Miles Bridges. What are we doing about that situation? Oh yeah, well, I missed a whole year. Let's just call it a 10 game with 20 game, 30 games, 10 games left, 20 games already served, whatever. It's weird because it feels like one of those prison sentences where it was like you served X amount, but concurrently and all this stuff that like nobody really understands why it's like they got 80 years in prison, but then they're out like 6 years in. And it's like, I don't understand, because of credit for time served. And it's like, oh, okay, sure, I guess. But it's yeah, man, weird. I just don't own it right from the jump. Like you should have just said this months and months ago when everybody would be like, okay. Then everybody would be like, all right, I get it. Put him out of sight, out of mind. We'll talk about it in the summertime when maybe he comes back.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's probably the way this should have gone. We should have heard earlier, because it does seem like it could be a little bit after the fact, coming into play here. Like, hey, we're going to make this sound better. But that said, he was out for an entire year.
Yeah.
We'll see, and we'll see what happens here. You know what? Like, hopefully he's able to turn things around and make things better. I would expect he's not going to get a warm reception a lot of places next season. Like that's going to be a fact.
I don't even know if he's going to get one in Charlotte, at least initially, right? It'll be probably their first handful of home games. He's going to hear it a little bit, and then we know how this goes in sports. If you score enough points and do enough to help your team play well, you're going to find your way back into the fans' good graces one way or another. I mean, we've seen it, countless examples of it. So, yeah, and this is very hard because I don't want to take the whole show down this direction, especially not today when we're struggling. But I'm a big believer in second chances for people. That said, there are certain things where you got to do a lot to earn that second chance when you blew it the first time around. And I'm just not. I don't know exactly how I feel about this one. I'm so very, very conflicted because he did not play for an entire year and all those things there. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure, where I feel on this. Keeping it about basketball, if we go back to that side of it, it's very clear. The Hornets, re-signing him is probably his best path forward. Hornets are very likely to get a much friendlier team-friendly contract than they were going to get otherwise if they re-signed him. So there's that part of it too. And if he can come back and be the guy he was basketball-wise, 2 seasons ago now, I guess, he could be pretty good, right? Yeah. He was really having a really nice year. He was going to get a very nice contract in free agency from someone, probably the Hornets, but from someone. He was a really good partner for LaMelo Ball too. So, we'll see how this goes, but there's a lot of questions going on around that Hornets organization, and I'm not sure how they're going to answer most of them.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that all comes together. Of course, what happens in the draft lottery could have a lot to say about that.
Coming right up, man. 11 days out.
It's coming. It's coming. Before we know it, somebody's future is going to change. Somebody's going to get Wembanyama, and we're going to start making projections about who else they're going to add and all that kind of stuff.
Yep. So not even 2 weeks out, or 14 days out. Sorry. 14 days.
Still, it's going to fly.
2 weeks from today.
It's going to fly.
Yeah. It always does. And then the next thing you know, it's like, holy cow, it's the draft lottery. Oh my gosh, it's the draft. Oh, it's the offseason. Oh, it's summer league. And then it's like, wow, it's next season again. Like it doesn't stop. The NBA's done a really good job becoming a 12-month a year league instead of a 7-8 month a year league.
My poor wife trying to plan a vacation. She's like, okay, when are you not busy? I'm like, I don't. Maybe September, maybe a little bit of August. You never know.
Yeah, this is super first world complaint problems here. But for us, it's like in reality, you don't feel comfortable doing anything really till the end of summer league because that's almost kind of like all right, things have calmed down. But by the time that happens in the middle of July, that leaves for us like a pretty short window because our daughter goes back to school beginning to middle of August. I think like next year it's like the 9th or 10th of August or something. So it is like, all right, so we got 2 weeks in the middle of the hottest time of year when everybody's on break. Like, where do we want to go? And then that turns into how about nowhere? Maybe the movies once in a while. So yeah, it's but those are complaints that are no one cares about.
No, so, we are
in the grand scheme of things.
We are beyond blessed to get to do what we do for sure.
Correct.
All right, I'm gonna go rest my Tom Thibodeau gravel voice here, and thank you everybody for joining us.
Let's one last question. What's your on the record pick? Lakers Warriors.
Oh man, I'm gonna go with what I said previous series. I'm gonna say Lakers in 6. I don't like having to go 7 in game 7. Like I think it's gonna be a crazy close series. And I think the Lakers are an underdog for a reason, but I'm not picking against my team, so I'm gonna go Lakers in 6.
There you go. I'm going Warriors in 7. I just think I think this is gonna be a battle, and this is a treat, right? As a neutral fan, like this is great. Like I'm super excited. It's who knows if we're ever going to get Steph and LeBron again. Yeah. So like I'm going to take it while they're still both very very meaningful good players. So I'm super excited
for sure. For sure. Yep.
All right, go rest, my friend.
I shall. Same to you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Till next time. See ya and stay safe.